part 3, and this is Lance White with Andrew Bartzis.
Yes.
And we are going through the Galactic history, and we left off at a point where we were talking about the event and Lemuria.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little more about Lemuria. I was describing Air City's leapfrogging through time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, leapfrogging through time means you're trying to fan out and sand down the bumpy parts of the timeline where other species forcefully get here and create timeline wars. So their goal was to stop that. Well, it got to a point where they were able to stop some of it. Enough of it for them to go back in time and to... when Lemuria was first, before its first fall, there were over 170 billion people living on this planet.
Wow.
It was a really big planet.
Yeah.
They began to ferry through the timeline those people so they wouldn't have to be stuck in this war part.
Mm-hmm.
So they could clear out that other timeline, especially when they moved the planets. So they started ferrying their people to the new timeline. Lemuria's second raise went to about 85 billion people on the planet.
Mm.
But that 85 billion people weren't first species people.
Mm.
Many of them were refugee planets people that Earth adopted as brothers and sisters, or daughters and sons. Their planets were under domination and control, and the beings that were out traveling and couldn't come home had to have somewhere to go, had to have a sacred feminine planet to stay connected to a tree of life. If you're a free-roaming galactic planet and your planet sentient loses lots of its vibration and you use technology to supplement breeding, you get into the cloning factor where many of these species out there can no longer have children, don't know how to be pregnant, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
They came here, Earth adopted them, and the population raised, and then the consciousness of the planet raised. The consciousness of our solar system raised, the consciousness of our sun raised, and the total sine wave of consciousness that represents our solar system spiraling around the galactic central sun means we can go a little faster. Time gets redefined at this point. It isn't anywhere like we see now. So when we see people in books saying 300,000 BC it was this, 200,000 BC, it isn't that, because time doesn't work like that in the past. We're basing it off of our time. Time here right now is just a social agreement.
Yeah.
How many calendars do we have in this world? How many time dates do we have? Universal time, Greenwich Mean Time, Daylight Savings Time. Time is social. It's not a universal concept anymore. So when we try to gradiate backwards what time is, it begins to fail because our written history has been manipulated by time travel, by people that knew what was happening in 2011 and read the books that led up to it. Yeah. And they're the ones that wrote them also.
Right. Now, does that include the sacred texts as well?
Many of them have been hijacked, but to have religion, you have to have good in it.
Right.
Absolutely have to. Right. Otherwise, the falseness won't create. Now, when Lemuria rose its second time, there was a heavy spiritual influence that created the first semblance of religions, where sects of people created this religion, sects created this religion. Some was around technology, some was around unity consciousness travel, some was around no technology and you lived in the dirt, but you had all of the DNA technology in your body to go anywhere you wanted. And every time you came back to Earth, it was to be on her soil with bare feet, barely any clothes, making your own home out of what the Earth provided to you, creating your oral traditions so when souls would come together in the dream world and then in the physical world, they can procreate new soul families here. This is what Lemuria was about at this raise. They were trying to get back into the concept that Earth is a seed planet. It's meant to bring DNA wisdom to new planets or young planets so that they can have souls that go there, have the technology that go there, so that the commerce of consciousness expands throughout the universe because our universe is ever expanding. So Lemuria had the technological issue, and it's the same issue that with Atlantis. Technology comes to a point where the generation that's leaving and the generation that's coming in don't have the same point of view.
Oh, right.
Okay, so one technology that is absolute unity bliss type can be turned into a weapon that can be used somewhere else in a different type of reality. Lemuria had very little choice but to end some of the dramatic timeline, the dramatic karmic lines out there, which was to create a military force, and go out and defeat and begin to recapture the worlds under domination and control. At this point, there are as many as 200,000 worlds that were in domination and control. It had spread that quick. Well, 200,000 means that they can put a lot of souls in spiritual invasion. You have to stop that at the source. At this point, cities were created out of crystal that were built on heavy-duty earth chakra points that were as many as 300,000 of the most powerful psychics in the world would come and sit in this crystalline city, remote view, remote experience, and remote attack on other planets' sentience or its species on the surface and kill everyone there.
Wow.
Because that was the only way to stop that invasion.
Wow.
Or a meeting point, a rendezvous point of 10,000 vessels coming to invade here. They'd wait for them to assemble and then psychically attack everyone inside.
Wow. Now, were some of those people us, in a sense?
In a sense, yes.
In a sense.
Because the migration patterns are coming in and out. Lemuria's first rise and fall, big migration away, big migration back, big migration away, big migration back.
So it seems that all these wars are never ending because they can't. Once you destroy something, then you have the retaliation. You have
Correct.
the swing of the
And it could take 1,000 or 1,000,000 years for someone to
Right.
rebuild.
Right.
And there's 2,300 separate races out there that have had their nose smacked with a rolled up newspaper. Okay?
Right, that's true. And so, but the same 15 beings
Are the ones that are pulling the dramatic strings to light the fire of anger in other worlds so
Yeah.
that they will build faster and recover faster and attack harder.
Now, what dimensions do they exist in? If
The
they're-
15, there's 3 that are 6th dimensional,
Okay.
2 that are 7th dimensional, 6 that are 8th dimensional, and the rest are 9th.
Wow.
And the 9th dimensional ones are here from the 3rd generation of immigrants from other universes here, so there were only 3 galaxies in our universe when these beings migrated here.
So they probably consider themselves the big kids on the block.
Yes. I call them the Galactic Mafia
Yeah.
because they're separate of light and dark, even though they are both light and dark at the same time.
Yeah.
But they're not neutral. Their goal is to become a new galactic prime creator in a galaxy that already has a prime creator. So that eventually they can go from galaxy to galaxy to galaxy and be the prime creator in a universe. When this universe was created, the sentients created a contract with our multiverse
Mhm.
to say, I'm going to be a universe to create consciousness, evolution, and expansion, and invite immigrants from other dimensions to experience free will. These are entities that want to limit the 100% free will one galaxy at a time.
Right. So it's a self-serving.
Correct.
Right. And that now in this period of time when everything is reworked, the 2011-2014 time frame, are they working for a graduation date as well?
Yes, that's called service to self-ascension.
Okay.
Okay, it is a concept that was, let me describe this a proper way, created in this universe and spread to other non-free-willed universes. And it was always a theory that no one could ever prove to be right
Yeah.
unless you had everything set up. And beings began to migrate here when they saw the setup of what Earth was.
Huh.
They said, I can do it.
Okay.
And these beings all came from different parts and essentially synchronistically all became here on Earth. Now, I've described these beings as being so large they can't fit into a single human body that they become millions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, some of these beings have fully invested into this world.
So okay. So
There's
they have,
no other parts of the
okay,
main world. And then there are other ones that still have parts other places. The ones that are fully invested here, the best guess from the light forces out there is they won't be able to because Earth consciousness will absorb them because they are contracted to be here in some way, but they've created side contracts that divert Earth's main contracts. They're in charge of the incarnation grid. They've tried killing Earth sentience and replacing it many times, but they can't. Everything fails at some point. But service to self-ascension for these beings could mean that all of their pieces, parts individually ascend and become higher entities. If there's a part that's away from the planet, the guess is, does that ascend too? Or do these new pieces parts become thousands of master avatars that can create more pieces, that can go to more galaxies and do this over and over again? So they exponentially expand themselves.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's an interesting idea. Do you have any idea as to the possibility?
I have searched the Akashic record up and down. There's only speeches on it by the greatest of Venusian philosophers that got together in a massive psychic group mind that was broadcast. The Venusians at times will declare a 72-hour piece where philosophers from the dark side, philosophers from the light side, and philosophers from the neutral side sit down in a place and just debate. They don't argue, they just debate.
Okay.
So everybody's side is put on the table for trillions of people to watch.
Wow.
Venus is here. They're the big philosophy thing.
Yeah.
Earth, it's in its situation where if service to self-ascension really does happen, the philosophers really have no clue what it really means. It is that new. But it's also, these multidimensional beings have been planning and planning and planning and planning versus a prime creator that's one spark of a universal creator.
Yeah.
So the universal creator may want service to self-ascension out of them. We don't know, though. But if it does, it will serve a purpose somehow, because what we're in, we've been fed a crap sandwich for a really long time, and some people don't know it's a crap sandwich.
Yeah.
Well, we want to eat something different.
Right.
All right?
Thank you very much.
We don't want the crap sandwich anymore.
Exactly.
So, service to self-ascension, what is it really? Even the greatest ascended masters don't really know. There's a good guess, but don't really know.
It seems that it would naturally have its limitations.
Correct.
That the experience of love and unity would simply be lost on it.
Or it's not. It's the opposite of love. Hatred is the new love.
Right.
Because it is perspective here.
Right. That's right. Huh. And it seems that hasn't been working out very well here for millions of years. So
unless you're that multidimensional being and you're living rich everywhere you are.
Right, and that's basically what's happening. So those 15 have aspects of themselves in all the large,
all the largest family. If there's a banking crest, if there's a family crest, it's been hijacked by spiritual contracts, guaranteed.
And of course, there are probably those that are here that we don't know about, that are outside the framework of the Rothschilds and Royals and so on and so forth. And the
ones that have kept themselves secret and only created mystery schools that have 10 students every generation.
Right. Wow. What about what about some of the other planets? So Saturn is said to be kind of a demonic. I've heard that there's a kind of a demonic force of aspect to Saturn.
That's the crazy part about Saturn. Saturn was our solar system was built from the ground up.
Okay.
Saturn's piece to the puzzle was the multidimensional beings here that were instilling fake religions to get warrior followers. Saturn saw this and went, "Hey, that's a really good idea." All right?
Right.
Saturn at that point was a high-dimensional planet that wanted to get in on the game, and it started assembling planets around it to do exactly that. And it began mining the most powerful people from other societies to its place. Well, it wanted to get into the game. So it made sure it was part of the Galactic Ascension machine because it created drama. Religious drama, spiritual drama, technological drama. I mean, even right now, it's kind of giving me the evil eye because it doesn't like me talking about it. But at this point, it's tired. It's tired.
Yes.
It's tired.
Yeah.
We're tired. We're all done.
Yeah.
Even the multidimensional beings, we've been at this for so long.
Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah.
They all know it's over. It's just they're stuck in this repetitive bad habit pattern that the minions can't break because they've been in spiritually contracted for so long. They have no clue that they're even in free will.
Right. Right. So what's going to tip the game?
It all depends on how we awaken, how much we are in fear, how much the propaganda has really seeded into people. Example, we're manifesting creating beings. If they mass broadcast asteroids, we may create that asteroid. Okay?
Right.
The asteroid that just went over Russia, that was a real asteroid,
Mm-hmm.
but its purpose was to create fear.
Mm.
Now, all those Russian people that experienced it are in fear, and they can take that energy
Mm-hmm.
and then reinvest it into more fear in those people.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone else that's witnessed it on YouTube, they can be reinvested in fear, which could create an asteroid-based event off of our own fear because we're manifesting it.
Mm-hmm.
These beings don't really care about the outcome of Earth. They just want to harvest as many of the most powerful souls as possible so that they're in domination and control and go somewhere else and set up a galactic ascension machine separate so there can be no quarantine that's stopping them.
They would be basically limitless at that point.
Correct.
And what's to say that hasn't happened already?
The quarantine is pretty well effective now.
Mm-hmm.
There was a long time that they debated what to do and the quarantine wasn't fully enforced.
Mm-hmm.
And it started a smuggling operation that started around 6,000, 7,000 BC. Now, there's always been a quarantine,
Mm-hmm.
but it used to be there were psychics that lived on a planet that their whole job was to defend Earth psychically. But you had a coalition of them, millions of them.
Mm-hmm.
So one world would say, for a year, my group will be active, another group, my year will be active, and they trade based off of their calendars and their positions facing Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Until finally they had to put ships there. Until finally they had to put the psychics in the ships, which took away from their ability to create commerce because psychics drive the vessels, psychics create the commerce, and then the technology needed to be manifested here, which was way far away from all their resources there. And they had to figure out how to take consciousness from those worlds and bring it here and have it a seamless transport while Earth was going through the densest part of space. Because there was a while that no vessels could enter our solar system.
Mm.
So whoever was enforcing the quarantine had to be there for 1,000,000 years until they came out of the dense part.
Mm.
And that means they wouldn't be with their species, wouldn't be with their soul family, and very possibly lured into the Galactic Ascension machine and never get out until now.
Wow.
So it's a big deal for them. It was really a big deal.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned something about there being a timeout recently.
Oh, yes. March 20th to the 22nd of 2013, the prime creator of this galaxy came in and audited this world's soul contracts from bottom to top. Anything that's ever lived here, anything that's ever been stuck here, all of its soul contracts were read in a complete and total expression, so it became down to the final equation of where Earth was as it's traveled from the beginning of the setup of the management system we have now, the management system being the Council of 12. That is 4 light, 4 dark, 4 neutral. The neutral all got kicked out by the dark guys because they said, we'll kill 10 billion of your homeworld people unless you leave. Neutral guys left. It broke down to 7 light, 5 dark. That means the dark could incarnate more of their lower consciousness beings here, which would ratchet Earth's consciousness down even more because the grid's power were lower and lower. And the more lower consciousness people you put into a high consciousness world, the world had to put the dimmer switch on to adapt to them. Otherwise, those consciousness couldn't be here.
Right.
That's hijacking the incarnation grid. The Council of 12, when the audit came through, they tried to use CERN, the Large Hadron Collider in France, to fudge the numbers, the best way I'll describe it.
Ah.
It was seen through. They were all ejected from the game. All of those people that were a part of that project were ejected. This goes for the light, too, because the light was doing some pretty nasty things at the time, too. There are light beings that are so far up the butt of light, they only see darkness. They're into polarity so far, and there's no neutral side in between them. They're just battling to battle because they battled for so long.
Wow.
And I'll win at any cost. And when you say win at any cost, you're not a light being anymore.
No.
You need to go heal, You
Right.
go back to your source and look at this from a different perspective.
Right.
And that includes the dark guys too.
Right.
Because even, there were some dark guys that turned out to be light simply because that was the only way to counter the light.
Huh.
Exactly. Creation of fake dark of there's light beings that are in fake dark beings and dark
Right.
beings and fake light
Right.
beings, and then you have fake light beings who are both.
Wow.
Okay?
Tricky.
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 And no matter how light you are, if you do that for 1,000,000 years, you lose your way.
I would think so.
You lose your way.
I would think so. Are there still ascended masters who are legitimate ascended masters, or has that all been pretty much corrupted?
The texts. Okay, if you have an ascended master that makes a book, and then that person writes the book, and he dies, the next books would be co-opted. The next
Okay,
generation's
okay.
books would be co-opted.
Okay.
And then there are other people that were here to be a fake ascended master because they knew that they were going to publish 10,000 years of books, or 1,000 years of books, or 500 years of books. And then you have, best way to describe it, there are no actual ascended masters walking our planet.
Right.
It's actually by
Right.
rule like that. Okay? And though many of them have broken the rules and been ejected from the game,
Huh.
okay? And there are others that have figured out the subtleties so that they help us plan our contracts so that we can get in here and be powerful. And then there are ones that help us plan our life 1,000 lifetimes ahead of time, 10,000 lifetimes ahead of time, 1,000,000 lifetimes ahead of time.
Wow.
For me to be here, I had to do that. I had to plan a long time in advance. I had to be 1,000 chess moves ahead of somebody that's on 50 million chess moves.
Right. Right. It seems like it would be a pretty rare thing for somebody like
In my
you.
reading skills, I have met many, many, many people that are like that.
Huh.
I call it the resistance of free earth. It's a pot of
Okay.
one. And each person that's been planning their lifetime, hundreds of lifetimes in advance, is a resistance of free earth.
Mhm.
Because their purpose here is to find the soul codes among all of our commonality of species and then complete them. And once we have a complete soul code as a species, domination and control loses its most important peg, which is the ability to keep us separate as soul families.
Wow. So at this point, it seems that things are as divisive as they could be, and
Right. It's reached its peak of divisiveness.
so what we might be seeing from now forward, since 2014 is kind of the drop dead date.
Well, this can be extended out 20 years if they want.
Okay.
The quarantine grid is very enforced now. There are vessels in our atmosphere that are taking consciousness and reinvesting it into the earth, slowly raising the energies of earth like trickle charging a battery.
Okay.
If they raise it too fast, there'll be people on this planet who simply can't exist here when fade out.
Okay.
And they don't want that to happen. They want the graduating classes.
Right.
So the quarantine is well in effect. When I say this can be extended out 20 years, it's all about enough consciousness here to accept the first two stages of the Dreamtime events that we have that lead into the harder parts of consciousness to accept, where you could have an entire city, in a brief second of unity, no time, completely go, what's happening, and ascend. And that's what actually happened to some of the Mayan people in the 600 AD parts.
Huh.
They did that, but they purposely let them ascend, but they didn't get a full ascension. They actually got sold to a other domination and control species.
Ooh.
And that's been very common. They would let certain societies raise their vibration really fast and then cut the cords of vibration and just mass teleport them to another planet in slavery.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
For the exchange of technology.
Wow. That's pretty ruthless.
Yeah.
That's pretty ruthless. So it looks like we're up against quite a bit of...
Well, they can't sell us in slavery anymore. That's what the quarantine was about. The quarantine has many levels. One of the most important aspects to understand is a human being in this world, we have diseases here that aren't created by man.
Oh, right.
Okay, and those diseases are purposely brought here, so if a human being is taken off-world, it could spread a pan-galactic virus that could kill trillions. And in fact, it has happened not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 11 times.
Wow.
Okay?
Okay.
Trillions were killed each time. Not billions, trillions.
What about the possibility of the development of nanotechnology as an ascension tool for the dark? In other words, using nanotechnology to harvest our physical selves. There's a lot of talk about chemtrails.
Okay. When it comes to technology, there's always the fear factor of the technology.
Mm.
Fear is more powerful than the technology in this time right now. The technology is vitally important. The creation of chemtrails, its vast majority now is fear-based because it was exposed.
Right.
And once it gets exposed, they go, well, you just gave me a fear tool.
Right.
But it's being exposed allows people to wake up and allows people to gain consciousness,
Right.
but it creates more fear. The actual Akashic view of chemtrails is more to block out the galactic energies that are coming in
Right.
and to create a different hue. And that different hue interacts with your pineal gland. Combine that with fluoride and all the other things that they put into our foods. It's to limit our ability to stay in consciousness quiet, where you go into the silence. That's its purpose.
Mm.
If it makes you sick, it gives you the sniffles.
Right.
If it causes cancer, all of that prevents you from going inside
Right. Right.
and hearing silence.
Right. Right. One of my guests, Andrew Norton Weber, brought up the idea that using distilled water flushes out the pineal gland. It removes the fluoride that's calcified.
It can.
And so that could be a tool that people could use quickly to...
My personal view about this pineal gland, the whole thing is a psyop.
I was wondering about that.
The whole thing
I
is a
wanna-
psyop that was purposely put out to make people, I have to decalcify my pineal gland.
Right.
Well, guess what? You're still stuck in fear.
Right.
You're still stuck in
right,
fear.
Right.
The science of fluoride is to create a crystalline structure in the fluid sac of the pineal gland.
Mm-hmm.
The crystalline structure, its purpose is to take scalar wave information
Mhm.
from etheric satellites so that you would be staying in your local Dreamtime Sacred Geometry City.
Well, that doesn't sound like a good thing.
No, well, there's the example, those transformers, those big garbage can looking things on every light pole, certain distance,
Right.
create an omnidirectional field that interact with the crystals in your pineal gland, which
Okay.
keep you trapped there. So you can't get into global dreamtime. So
Wow.
yes, decalcifying is good. It is a fear tool. So it's both that damned if you do, damned if you don't. But when you realize how the system interacts with it, there's so many ways. The plugs that are in this room create an electromagnetic field.
Right.
The old school homes had what's called knob and tube wiring, which was unshielded wiring around a ceramic tube. And that
Yeah.
created an omnidirectional field too that interacted with the different version of the pineal suppression system.
Okay. So we're not going to be seeing any change in the electrical. They basically throwing everything at us that they can.
Correct. The big thing is the wires on the poles should have been put underground. How many hurricanes have wiped them out? And they haven't figured it. And corporate is all about the bottom dollar.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Why wouldn't they do it? The answer is they need them above ground to control you.
Exactly.
Okay?
Exactly. And then, of course, we know that their technology is at least 100 years or more in advance.
Thousands.
Maybe thousands, right. So what's going on with this? They're planning a whole new, a larger collider. So are those the same, is that the same group of scientists that's trying to...
Okay. CERN's original function was to fudge the numbers of the audit.
okay.
But it had other functions too. It was a teleportation device. So if the Earth they knew that there was no chance whatsoever of winning,
Mhm.
even though there is now, they would try to teleport Earth before it went out of the densest part, so it would go back into the densest part at the earliest date, and the people in that dense part would dream the rest of the solar system back to them. We're manifesting, co-creating on the graduation timeline.
Mm.
All those other planets are intricately linked into that graduating timeline. manifesting, co-creating spirits in that timeline literally can bring us all back.